Well, welcome to the podcast. I am so grateful that you're here with us today, Whitney. Thank you so much for coming on. I just kind of want to start. Tell us about like your story, who you are, where you've been, what you do, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited to be here and to share a little bit. Hopefully, some of my background and experiences can help someone else. So, introduction, grew up in California, and I did not grow up involved in an operation or nothing that my family had. I just got started because I wanted to be in 4-H. And so I remember when I was younger, my parents were like, can't show cattle because you need to be able to look into their eyes. And I'm only like 5 foot tall. So I stuck with small species and really loved that and did all the things. But I don't remember when I exactly picked up my first camera, but I remember like taking a camera to shows, which as most people do. And, you know, you sit along the ringside and like you take these very terrible photos as like a 10th grader, you know, like, oh, I'm in photography class in high school. And so yes. I just did that. And then there was an opportunity when I was a freshman. I went to Butler Community College. So I was out here in Kansas and American Royal was going on. And they're like, we need someone to help pull pan at the backdrop. And it was show champions, I think, at the time. A lot has changed since then.
A lot has changed since then.
This probably would have been the fall of 2015.
Okay.
And so, and no one ever wants to pull the pan at a pig backdrop. But I was like, this is my species. This is where I feel comfortable. And so between like getting introduced to that group and then being at other shows that I showed at and working with the backdrop photographers,
yes,
they kind of like knew that I was interested and, you know, like willing to do some of those other things that aren't as fun, which that's kind of where you have to start, right? You start pulling pan or getting ears and then maybe make your way into the ring. And then if you're really good enough, then you can take backdrop photos. And so that's kind of where I got started. But between that and then K-State has the Ag Mag class.
Yes.
And I was an ANSI student here at K-State, but as I was like junior year trying to figure out what I wanted to do, like I love like the science and the knowledge of the animal science or like ag industry, but I wanted to be able to pair that with a little bit of creativity.
Yes.
And so I knew I had this camera. I was kind of interested in it. Took the Ag Mag class. And Lisa Mosier was amazing. I don't know how I ever...
Bless that woman. She, I feel like, made such an impact on so many young individuals and especially women in the industry that went to K-State. So yes.
She was awesome because I had no writing experience. And she managed to get me through writing multiple stories. And like, that's where photography is great, but like, there's way more to the communications world.
Oh, yeah.
But then that led to getting an internship at Denver and the media internship at Denver, like just really changed everything for me. And so decided to get my master's in ag communications and I went to Texas Tech for that.
Awesome.
So I was able to pair the ag comm degree with my ANSI degree and got a job at the Angus Association doing communications. And there's a lot that like people may not know in terms of how Angus is set up with. They have a publication and an advertising company, but I was under the department. So we did a lot more like PR and association membership type communication education. So loved those experiences, but always had done the photography stuff on the side.
Yeah.
And so I was getting to a point where I'm like, can't do both. And so I just took the leap last March, coming up on a year.
So exciting.
And here we are. Yeah, I feel like I just told a really long story, but...
No, it's completely fine. I mean, you have a really beautiful story and a long story at that, but kind of like expand a little bit more on taking that leap into deciding to go full-time with photography and kind of the journey that you've been on in this past year of just, you know, like it is a leap. It is a really big step of faith to be self-employed and to go from having a full-time job with a stable income and a 401k and health benefits and all of those things and deciding like, no, I really want to just go full-time with this and give myself a shot, I guess.
I think it is a very scary decision and something that I talked to a class at K-State this fall, or the ACT club, and I was like a year ago, so like the fall of 2022, I did a mentoring session and I told that mentor, like, there's no way I could ever go full time. Like thinking about what it actually costs, you know, like as we do this, it's great because we're making extra money on the side.
Yeah.
But like, that's just not reality of running a business and sustaining, a household and all those good things that comes with adulting.
Yes.
But, I also ran the numbers and was like, okay, if I made this doing it at like 25% of the time, what would it look like if I could, multiply that times however many?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I also got over the fear of like, truthfully, and there's a lot of conversations, especially like on TikTok and everything, of like, job security and finding a good job. But like, you could get fired any day.
Especially right now. Like, there are hundreds of companies going through insane layoffs right now. And like in the agricultural industry, I think that we're blessed in a different way, that we don't necessarily see the side that like Fortune 500 or Fortune 5 companies go through and stuff like that as far as layoffs go, but it's still a very real portion. And in corporate America, there's this like stigma that you have job security, but it's like in reality, you're an at-will employee. Like you could get fired whenever they feel like it, type of thing.
Absolutely. And not that I was in that position by any means, but I think when you like look at doing entrepreneurship and running your own business in that lens of like, okay, it's scary, but I'm in control of what I make here. Like the time and money and energy and effort I put into my own job hopefully pays off. Whereas you could work your ass off. I don't know if I should cuss, but
you're fine.
in a corporate, or not that Angus is corporate, but any job, and you're not always going to be rewarded for that. And sometimes you're just cut because the way like it is. And again, I was blessed to work at Angus and like, I'm so thankful that was my first job, because I don't think I would be able to be doing what I'm doing without them. Yeah. The people and the experiences. But I think when you like change your perspective and like, okay, there's a lot more in your control than you think. Yeah. I looked at the numbers, and also like one of the things that, as someone who is, I wanted a good career. And so one of the things that like, okay, does that mean I'm growing at Angus? Does that mean I'm taking other opportunities? One of the reasons that I also left and kind of like did my own thing was, the further up I moved or the more money that I made, that meant it would be even harder to replace it. Yes. And so when I was like, well, okay, if I can give myself a year to hit my salary now, and I have no kids, limited expenses, like I can work 80 hours a week if I need to and survive. Like there's all those things that I had less to lose if I took the leap. Yeah. And so there's just way more than you're like, I can never do that. But then when you actually like dig into it, you're like, okay, this is actually feasible. It's actually a feasible thing that I can, control. And I like that you brought up the fact that like early on in your career, it's a lot less daunting, I guess, to be like, okay, I can replace this income because I'm only making like $45 or $50 or $60,000 a year, rather than like you get way up and you're a vice president of a corporation. You're like, okay, now I need to replace $160,000 income with this side hustle that I'm only giving 25% of my energy to. Yeah. I think once you change your perspective and then just work really hard and do a good job, right? I think in the ag industry, a lot of it is word of mouth and recommendations and who you know. And sometimes, I've been in situations, especially in college, where like I came from California, that I didn't know everyone. So I missed out on some opportunities. But everyone has the same opportunities to get to know those people. Yes. And so I think through livestock judging and college and showing, like there's so many ways to expand your network, and having a good network and doing a good job means you'll have business. And so what started out as, okay, I'm going to do photography. I never had like niched down into one aspect, but I obviously did some of the livestock stuff. And then that grew to like, okay, you need senior photos and you need family photos. And I also knew that going full time, there'd be a chance for me to actually do weddings. Since my previous job, weekends were just pretty much gone. And so I had like started to do second shooting and kind of grow with that. Yeah. And so I've done everything over the last year. But I've also grown a ton with more of like a promotional marketing type video scenario or services. And so that's been really fun because there's a lot more of a gap that can be filled there. Yeah. And I love getting an opportunity to help. I think that there's a place for photos and for video, but there's something so special about getting to like elevate someone's business through video, especially in a world where like photos are great, but they're kind of old, like old news.
Yes.
And so getting to do that on the video side of things to grow even more, I think is really rewarding. And so I'm actually in the process of like trying to figure out, you know, like, do I focus on one thing or not? But primarily right now it's doing weddings and the livestock. I keep calling it like ag marketing services because there's a little bit of photo involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And video. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
That's so fun. I love that you kind of brought video up into it too, because we are in such a video world and a video space with the way that social media and marketing and everything like that is going. And I feel like video offers some things that photos can't. I'm a photographer. I love photos. Like, don't get me wrong. I think that there is a time and place for photos and they're so important within the industry, but videos offer a certain personal aspect that you don't necessarily get behind photos. You can tell people's story with photos, but it's a lot easier to do that with video content and things like that. Can you kind of share a little bit about like why you decided to make that switch and like kind of like expand on just that journey of like over the past year kind of deciding like, okay, this is something that I really enjoy doing and this is a gap that I see in the industry that I feel like I can kind of fill?
I think the main reason that I was comfortable even taking like the first job was because I had the opportunity to help a lot of other people. Which I grew up learning like, and probably still to this day don't get paid enough to help. Or I just truly value experience.
Yes.
And so my time at Angus and working with some other mentors, like I just tried to soak in as much as possible, you know, just watching them. And at Angus, we had the opportunity to, like, if I was on a shoot, and primarily for photos, but we needed to get a quick interview, you know, like I had to do some of that basic stuff. And when you understand a camera, like a video is not the same thing as photo, but at least like hopefully you can get it composed right. And like,
you understand the settings type of thing. Yeah.
So that was like where I started. And then I was like, okay, well, like maybe I can get some B-roll shots to add to this interview.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was truthfully like knowing you're going to suck, but just doing it anyways. It's the same thing with like, when we tried at Angus to post a lot more videos and TikToks at shows, and it's like, okay, first day, like you're at a show, this one's probably not going to be as good, but by the end of the weekend or the end of the week, like you'll be better. And so I didn't always show everything that I've been worked on or whatnot, but it was an area that I've always enjoyed. Like there's a new challenge, right? When you get to photos and you're like, okay, feel pretty comfortable, but like, do I need a new editing style? Or like, do I need to add something? And so like, for me, good or bad, I feel like video is another challenge. And truthfully, like they complement each other well, because from a marketing standpoint, you really should have both.
Yes.
And so I knew that people didn't really want to pay as much for photos, but would invest a little bit more in video. And so then getting to do video, you also can provide some of those photos because again, you need both. And so now I've looked at it from like maybe it's a little bit more of a cohesive package. And truthfully, every experience, I just keep learning more. And I truthfully don't know what I'm doing, but it's just little by little and a lot of YouTube and asking other people for help has just kind of been one project after another.
Absolutely. YouTube University, like I am a proud student of, and I will always say that like I'm not a completely self-taught photographer. I had a lot of really great mentors coming up and that like taught me a really good basic understanding of what I do now. But it's like I YouTube a lot and then really great opportunities to find amazing mentors within the industry. And like you said, with the whole like networking aspect and like learning from other people and stuff, I feel like is so important. It's so important to just be a sponge. Like just get yourself in as many opportunities or situations where you can either meet a new person, create a new connection, or learn something new. And as like a college student, I wish that was something that I was pushed to do a little bit more, was the networking opportunities, because I grew up very blessed to have a really expansive network within like the agricultural and show industry and stuff like that, showing livestock growing up and all of those things. But like those connections don't necessarily stay with you forever. And it's like continuing to build your network. And as you grow as an individual, continuing to build that as well with your business and just everything like that. And I think video has such an amazing space within agriculture. And like I said, the new new world that we're living in, and people with the grow of TikTok and everything like that, I feel like people are actually understanding the importance of it now, because before I feel like it was like people would look at video like, oh, I'm not going to run like a commercial or anything like that. Like, why do I need this? But now people are understanding the whole like basis of video. You can do so much with it. And it's really awesome that you're able to expand your network into like, hey, I offer this whole like cohesive package of, you're not only going to get video, but you're going to get photo, and you're going to get, I can help with other marketing aspects or like digital aspects after that, whether it's like catalog help or ad help or things like that. Like, it can kind of be a almost like one-stop shop as a marketer within the industry that once you create a relationship with someone, they really want to like grab onto that, and they want to have their one person that they go to for all of those things. So it's really great that you're able to kind of do that. And I think it's really important that just as a young individual in the industry, if you're listening to this and like, what do I do? How do I like get into this? How do I grow? It's like, build your network. Like that's one thing, no matter what you're doing in life, whether you're in photo or video, or whether you're in marketing, or whether you're just a college student, like just grow your network, and life will work itself out from there. And I think that is so important to remember. Can we kind of like talk a little bit about your just like expansion from going from like when you went full time, deciding that you were like, okay, I'm just going to do a little bit of everything, and kind of deciding like, now you're like, oh, I'm thinking about niching down into these things. But talk about like that kind of journey of like, okay, I'm going to try a little bit of everything, and we're just going to see what sticks type of thing like that.
It's an interesting concept, and I feel like based off of education that I see online, everyone's like, you need to label yourself as something, right? So like, I'm a wedding photographer, or like, I am a senior. And in the beginning, everyone says, go try everything. And so when I was doing it like on the side, freelancing, I really did everything, but I have a problem saying no. And a little indecisive in terms of like, okay, I enjoy all these things. Why do I have to pick one? And I've kind of changed my perspective now that I've been doing this for a year. I want to work with one type of client, and they might be someone that is interested in senior photos. Actually, here, let me give you this scenario. You're at a livestock show, you're showing, or the photographer, they love working with you. Okay, I enjoy working with them. They're livestock people, ag people, passionate, hardworking. All those characteristics of people that we enjoy being around each other. I want to be able to serve them in multiple capacities.
Yes.
And so right now, I do think that you can't do it. What's the saying? Like, I'm not going to think of it. But where like, you can't speak to everyone because then you're speaking to no one.
Yes.
And so you do have to niche down just a little bit. But I think within my marketing, and this is evolving, like nowhere near what it should be, but I think I've really focused on like, okay, these are the type of people that I want to work with. And so I would love to be able to do your wedding.
Yeah.
But then come back and work with you on a ranch shoot.
Yes.
So still doing multiple things, but trying to like figure out a way to, instead of just being a wedding photographer that enjoys working with couples in the livestock world, how can I create more of a client that I can serve in multiple phases, right? When like people in, like if you're a product-based business, you want to keep them coming back. Service-based is a little bit harder, and not everyone, take your senior photos every single year.
Yes.
And so if you can kind of work with people as you meet them at a livestock show, maybe you take their senior photos. Maybe that means family photos. Maybe that leads to weddings. So like, that's kind of the way I've looked at it. And maybe that's just me making it sound like it works in my head.
It makes perfect sense, honestly, though, because like you're not niche down in a area of photography, but you're niche down in your client basis. Like you have your ideal client still, even if you are just like, you're truly creating a client journey and like a long cohesive like client funnel almost. So like if you're familiar with like marketing or stuff like that, it's like you have a client funnel that you always want them to go down, and whether that be within just your niche of photography or something like that, but you have such a wider and larger funnel, because you're like, okay, I can serve them in so many capacities that it's like, I can truly be, again, like a one-stop shop photographer for all of their needs that they need, whether that be weddings or senior photos or just like different facets like that. And that's kind of, I've had such a hard time with, because so many coaches out there tell you like, you need to niche down, you have to like do your one thing and just be really good at it. And it's like, but I want to do more than one thing. Like, I don't want to just sit here and be like, I just do XYZ. It's like, okay, I want to be able to like serve my people that I enjoy. And I feel like we're so blessed within the livestock industry to have like really great, hardworking people that we can serve as photographers. And I just really love being able to serve all of them. So I understand where you're coming from. I feel like you're still niche down within the livestock industry of like, you're like, I have my people that I like being around, and those are the clients that I'm trying to attract through my marketing and things like that. Okay, so we've kind of talked a little bit about your journey within photography, how you kind of started going from like the corporate world into photography, a bunch of different things with that. Can we kind of like discuss a little bit more about like the actual livestock side of things and what brought you, obviously you grew up showing livestock, not cows, because maybe you're a little too short for that when you were young. I cannot relate, but at least like kind of going into that journey of deciding like, hey, I kind of like shooting photos of livestock, and kind of expand on that side of your business as well.
Absolutely. So I started helping at the backdrop, and then that kind of turned into like, okay, we need someone in the ring. And I didn't do a ton of work because I judged in college. So I had like negative time. And most of the time, you know, you're judging at shows or all that good stuff. And so I really just did it when I could. And so I didn't like go out there and think like, oh, I'm going to dedicate my heart and soul into this and like be a livestock photographer. It was more like, this is fun. I enjoy it. But, you know, one thing leads to another, and you get, you know, hopefully do a good job and enjoy working with the people that you work with. That's a big thing on some of those bigger shows, and even jackpots. Like, it's all about how you work with people, whether it's your coworkers or the people that you're shooting for. And so I had done that. And I had a few jackpots that I started with, mostly like here in Kansas. And actually my boyfriend's family used to help put on a jackpot in Missouri. And so that was like, okay, I can handle a jackpot.
Yes.
Like,
it's not as intimidating.
We can manage. Yeah. Like, I got to help them. Like, we designed a backdrop and kind of got to be on the back side of things. And so, but it was a big show. It was 3 rings. And so I was like, this is enough to make some money. But I remember the first time I put my pictures up that I actually charged. Because charging when you're first starting out with photos is really intimidating, because like the big shows, you know, charge 30 or 40 and like, do people pay that at jackpots? Anyways, we don't have to get into that. But I remember I put like on the back end, I must have not like updated it, and it was like photos were 99 cents. And I had a friend text me like, you need to change this. And she was buying a lot of photos, and I was like, thank you.
Like, change this right now.
I was like, yeah, I didn't mean to do that. Like, I do need to charge at least a few dollars, like $5, I think I started. And so that just kind of like, you know, one show to another, especially like when you're fresh out of showing, and my boyfriend's family was still showing. And so like I was at jackpots and whatnot, but it wasn't until I went full time this last year that I was like, okay, maybe I can actually, county fairs in California are big, as are some other states, but I know, I don't think in Kansas and Missouri, they're super big and worth having a photographer. But like for context, my county fair that I grew up with has 800 animals run through the livestock show or premium auction. And so, and you can only show one market animal. So that's like 800 exhibitors and 10-day fair. Like it's an ordeal. Yeah, it's a lot. And the money is really good. So everyone, you know, really goes all in. So I was fortunate that actually both the county fairs that I showed at had bids open, and there are shows during the week. So that was one thing that like, I didn't ever think until I went full time that I could manage more than one show without taking, you know, like several days off and then editing all of those photos. And both of the county fairs that I do at home also require to print the photos.
Oh, wow.
So 800 images organized by like lot number and kid and FFA chapters.
A lot.
So I think that there's potentially opportunity to do, more shows on my own before I went full time, but it was like, I needed the time to dedicate to like doing a good job and to staffing people. Like staffing is a lot harder than I think people realize.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I had my first 6-day show this last fall, and staffing that was the most terrifying thing ever. Like, I know people within the industry and stuff, but it was like, I had to have like another backdrop photographer and had to have like all of these other things. And it's like, I literally couldn't get this job done if I didn't have other people here. So it's like, please, you're completely basing your entire business and the outcome of that show on other people doing a good job, which is terrifying as a business owner who's a little bit of a control freak. Like,
it's a lot to trust in other people.
Yeah.
And I was not ready for that. And I also think it's intimidating when you're like, okay, I'm an individual photographer. I could take on a show, but like, okay, I can't do the Houston Livestock show. I can't do American Royal. But like, sometimes you think of like jackpots and those, and like, is there room for anything in between? And there 100% is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that like, or at least I was always like, well, I'm not good enough to do that. So, but now that I've had the opportunity to do that, it was great. But I'm so glad that I did have the time and dedication. But I think for anyone that's like interested in doing that, like, it doesn't hurt to just put bids in or to, keep trying, because maybe you do one while you're part-time and you're able to do like a Friday, Saturday type of fair or a bigger weekend show, more than just like a small local jackpot. And then, you do a good job, those turn into more, and then you can go full-time and like, because there's a huge need for good livestock photographers.
Absolutely. And I think that there's like such a great opportunity for those like local jackpot shows that maybe it's not necessarily like a huge money maker, but it's something that if you grew up in that county or something like that, it's a really great learning opportunity. I think you have to reshape your mindset around those things sometimes as like a starting out photographer, that like it's okay to go and not make any money, which sucks because you're giving up your entire weekend of going there and then editing the photos and like doing all of that stuff. But like maybe you meet someone there that then gets you a connection to a bigger show or like something like that. And then like you're also expanding your portfolio and just like different things like that like when you're starting out, there is such a need for really good livestock photographers. And I think that there is also such a need for like just within the industry, a like diverse set of people that are just willing to work and willing to do the job. And like there's a seat for you at this table. Like, I just had Tori Egger on the podcast, and she is like, that's her whole slogan is like, you have a seat at my table. And that's like needs to be the livestock industry photographer world as well. Like, there is a seat for you at this table, and there's a space for you in the industry, whether you're shooting a jackpot show with 40 animals in it or whether you're shooting the Houston Livestock Show or stuff like that too. So
I could not agree more. And I remember being in college, getting my camera, and people out there being like, oh, you're a livestock photographer, and like totally saying it very condescending and like, oh, there's another one. And it's like, okay, off the top of your head, how many good livestock photographers do you know? And how many shows are there in the world? How many livestock need pictured for sales? Like, there's a huge need. And so, yeah, I'm like, don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do it. And big picture here, right? Like, say you just want to do it in college or do it for your job, or like you want a marketing or communications job and want to learn how to do photos on the side. Like, it's a skill that's never going to go away.
Exactly.
So I would like, buy the camera, don't go in debt to do it, but buy the camera, like learn, meet people, like they're going to be experiences that are beneficial and positive to you forever. So like, really, what harm is there? Don't let someone tell you like, oh, there's another one. How many wedding photographers do you know? There's a million.
A million. And they all are able to have full-time jobs and like working for themselves. And like, because they can only do one wedding, maybe 2 weddings a weekend.
Right.
It's the same for livestock shows. A photographer can only do 1, maybe 2 livestock shows a weekend. And during like spring show season, oh my gosh, there's like 10 a weekend or stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. But you can't just expect to start out like, thinking you're at your best, but there's always room for growth. And I think if you have that, like, I want to learn and I want to surround myself with other talented, hardworking, ethical, good people. Yeah. If you have that attitude, I think that other people will take you on and want to like help coach you or teach you or just again, you be a sponge around them. And I think everyone has an opportunity that way.
Yeah, that's where I think like having such a really great mentor or just like group of mentors comes in so handy, because there's a lot to learn within the livestock industry, and like shooting photos there specifically, it's a very different way of taking photos rather than just like going in your backyard and taking photos of flowers that we probably all started taking photos of when we first got our camera, but it's very different than that. And it takes someone teaching you how to do that. And I think that that is like such an important thing as a young individual in the industry, is like find yourself a mentor, whether that be within your field or just like a mentor in general that you can just absorb their knowledge and information. And there are so many people out there that are willing to share. Like they ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And like if you need to, like hit up Whitney and pay for one of her mentor sessions, and like she'd be obviously more than willing to teach you. And it's like find resources where you can learn, and people that can kind of like put you on their wing and take you along in the journey, and you're going to be like so successful being able to do that.
Absolutely. The one thing I will add though to that like mentorship conversation, especially I have had a few more opportunities that people have come to me the more experienced I get. And I think that you don't just get to completely ask and think, oh, I'll just go get all the information I need from someone and then peace out.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a fine line of like, I love to help people, like I just said, and I want people to be successful.
Yeah.
But no different than like if you were to ask a recruiter, you know, go spend an hour with someone that you want a job with, right? Like their time is valuable.
Yes.
And so, you know, whether you work for them or just really like appreciate their time, or, you know, even writing a card, like there's a bunch of small gestures, or even sticking with someone, right? Like sometimes I think people just take what they want and then go to find the better opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think loyalty just speaks a lot. So I just say that as like a caution, and as you think about learning from other people, just know that like, you don't just
get to steal all their information. Well, like it's one of those things that like you and I have both talked about how we have had to teach ourselves a lot of things too. Like we had really great mentors, but we also had to go learn a lot on our own. And I think that that's really important to remember, that when you're reaching out to these people, don't expect them to just like necessarily give it to you for free. And it's their information and their time is valuable, and you need to be willing to pay for that or to give some other service in return. So like, for example, if I have employees come work for me at a show or something like that, I am giving them my information and knowledge so that they are taking good photos for me. And in return, I can have a profitable business and a profitable show, but then they are also able to learn from that. So it's a give and take right there situation. If I had someone just DM me on Instagram, I'm absolutely willing to answer like a question or two, but don't expect me to spend 3 hours of my time giving you all this information when I have an editing queue that's a mile long and I need to get these photos out and stuff like that. It's like our time is valuable too. So if you want a really great mentor, like pay for those sessions, things like that, or just like be willing to go work for someone, or be willing to be loyal to someone and be like, hey, like give me this information, don't say it like that, but like I get this information from you and I'm going to work for you with these shows that you have in the future, or things like that too. But it's like, make sure that you don't like use and abuse someone and then just like ditch them to go and find the next best thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, people want to help, so that's definitely not the issue. But I also think investing in mentorship and, I mean, online courses, or just even a group of people that can, you know, you're all trying to learn, like, it's worth those additional hours or dollars if you're really wanting to grow.
The ROI on that is going to be insane for you. Just like for me, I think about it in an aspect that I've paid for a mentor, like a one-on-one mentor, but then I've also had situations where it's like a networking opportunity comes up that I could pay for. So like a styled shoot where there's going to be multiple people there, or like different things like that, where it's like there are different opportunities in sectors where you can still like, you may have to put an initial investment towards it, but you're going to get a huge return on it. It may not be initial, like you may not see it for a year or so, but like you are going to thank yourself later on for investing in yourself and believing in yourself enough to put that money towards yourself, because that's truly what you're doing in the end, is like, you're not investing this money necessarily in another person. You're trusting yourself with this, because you're putting that money down. And I feel like when you have money down in something, you're maybe a little bit more invested as an individual as well, because you're like, okay, I've got skin in the game. Like, I'm going to take notes. I'm going to actually like learn. I'm going to like really put my heart and soul into this. That way I'm, being a sponge and not just, along for the ride just to have a good time or things like that. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the like mentorship side and starting within photography and stuff like that. How would you suggest like someone coming into the industry, like building their portfolio and how to like kind of go about just, we talked about networking a little bit and how important that is, but truly like building your portfolio. That way you can send that to shows or other branches or things like that down the road.
Practice definitely makes perfect. Like, what is the saying? Like, it takes 10,000 hours to become a professional.
Yeah.
And every time that I've ever thought like, oh, this is a good photo, which sometimes is hard to get to, but I also, look back in 6 months or a year and I'm like, okay, there was so much more to learn and grow. And so first thing is just like, I know a lot of people say this and I feel like it's cheesy to say, but like, just take your camera out. Yeah. Like I remember when I was first starting out and like I needed to like have the little cheat code or the cheat sheet to, like for your exposure and your,
like your camera settings
and all that. Yeah. Like I had the 3, like the triangle and all that good stuff. But that helped me take my camera out because I would like, take it out and not know what I'm doing. And I didn't have that. And then I have to look online and like, it's just a mess. Right. And so like, you have to kind of make it easy for yourself to learn. So just taking your camera out, dogs, photo, like flowers, whatever, taking it to shows. You have to be respectful of going to shows with a camera. Because I think that there's a fine line of like, okay, if you want to take, photos of your sibling, great. But you have to be cognizant that there's a photographer there to, provide images and sell those. And so I think that, if you're very respectful and only take images of, your family members and pay for the good ones, right? Because there's always a difference. But that's a good way to learn, or go to a show that there isn't a photographer. Yeah. But really it's just like practicing and maybe working for free. No different than second shooting or paying for a styled shoot in the like wedding portrait space. If someone wanted to come work at a show for me and, I already have everything staffed because I need to have, a certain level of quality and expertise and all this good stuff. But if you wanted to come take photos and learn, I'm more than happy to put you in the ring. Yeah. If your photos are good, great, we'll use them. And, maybe we'll even pay you if it all works out. But if not, there's just another opportunity to add to your portfolio. And so finding ways to do that, your own livestock at home, whether that's out in the pasture or, like if your sibling goes and sets up a lamb for you to take sale photos of, or offering your neighbors like, hey, I'll do this for free. Like, you have to put yourself out there. You have to try. And I think sometimes you have to work for free to build what you want.
I think that it is so like slept on sometimes of the working for free thought process, and like go find yourself an internship or go find yourself just like put yourself out there and don't be afraid to work for free. And I think that that's also something that not just beginner photographers need to remember, but also experienced. I did like free couples shoots. I did like all of this stuff. And then like also just getting out, I learned so much just going out with my camera when we were doing chores. Like when we were doing chores for feeding hay, when we were checking cows and feeding cubes, things like that. I just brought my camera with and just took photos, because I think a huge thing when you're learning manual and things like that too is it's really important to switch over to manual and learn that for yourself early on, because you're going to thank yourself later. But then also like when you go out to do chores, you're shooting in harsh lighting, you're shooting in different lighting, you're shooting in different scenarios. Like that is a perfect place to learn. And I think that is like, don't be afraid to just go out and work for free. It sucks sometimes when you feel like you're putting so much time and effort towards something and not seeing a return on your investment quite yet. But like, if you truly love it, it's one of those things that for me, I loved it so much, I didn't mind working for free. And now I'm finally to a place in my business where it's like, okay, we're starting to see the return on all of these things. And it's like with shows, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. If a show in your area doesn't have a photographer already, reach out to them and like pitch them your portfolio and different things like that. And, or if you don't have a portfolio yet, just tell them and be completely honest and say like, hey, I'm new to this. I'm willing to come out and work for free for the weekend and provide free photos for these kids. Would you be willing to have me out so I can just kind of learn a little bit more and things like that? That like building your portfolio is a really important part of this, but don't be afraid to build your portfolio for free, I think is a big part.
I think you can also ask people for help when you are building your portfolio, in a sense of sometimes we take all these photos, and art and photography and creativity is a little subjective, right? Like what you like might not be exactly what I like. I have a different style, whatever. There's all these things, right? So like you can't take everyone's word, but like sometimes maybe your parents aren't always the best judge of like the quality of your work, right? They're proud of you. You're working hard. You're trying to reach your goals. Yeah. That's great. But every now and then, like if you truly want to get better, you need someone to kind of say, okay, here's where you're doing really good at, but here's where we should work on. Yeah. Or, you know, different things like that. And so, and you can obviously say like there's groups on Facebook and there's different things like that. And that's another thing of like, you know, don't go send your photos all the time to people. But if you're at a point, like I actually think I was putting together a portfolio one time and I sent all of my photos to a mentor and I'm like, do we think that this is like a good representation of what I need to, you know, get this show or whatever. And so, you know, she was like, maybe change out this one, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Or work on this and whatnot. Absolutely. So those are like little easy things that can actually like, because you can be shooting, but are you getting better?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's so important to like remember that when you are just like so zoned in and focused on your own stuff, I think it's like super important to not compare yourself to other photographers all the time, but at the same time, make sure that you are producing quality work and you're continuing to grow and evolve within that. We kind of touched on earlier about like continuing to want to grow and develop ourselves. And I'm a serial learner. Like I love learning. I think that's one reason I actually enjoyed college, was because I genuinely enjoy learning and I genuinely enjoy like expanding my knowledge and just like client, like everything. I just enjoy learning about new things that I like doing, like photography and things like that. So I think it's super important to like not be afraid to get criticism on your work and not be afraid to like kind of like reach out to other people and be like, maybe it's not your parents, maybe it's a producer in the livestock industry that you have a connection with and you took a sale photo and you're like, hey, did I take this at the right angles? Does this look like a photo that you would use to put in a sale ad or things like that? And like you don't have to always ask photographers. You can also ask other people within your network and just kind of like expand from there and just continue to like, don't be afraid of rejection and don't be afraid of the critic part of it that you're going to get back when you're growing, because they always say, what's the saying? We're having a hard time coming up with the sayings tonight. But it's like that you have to, so many rejections and then you'll get like a yes or something like that, or things like that like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and don't be afraid to be rejected and don't be afraid to be wrong. And like, that's the only way that you can grow. Like, you're not going to grow out of just being perfect all the time. You're going to grow out of failing and failing flat on your face sometimes and things like that too.
I definitely think you learn a lot more from your failures than you do from all your successes. Not that those aren't great, and that's definitely a part of, like, you have to enjoy or be good at what you're doing. But yeah, if you're really trying to like make a business out of this or like be really successful, then yeah, it's going to take both wins and losses.
Yes, exactly. And like, that's so important to remember that if you are in a loss season right now, like don't let this just be a loss, like actually learn from it. Like, I feel like that is such an important aspect of failing. Like, don't let it just be a failure. Let it be a failure that you are growing from. Let it be a like growth catapult that you're down at the bottom, but you know what, you just hit rock bottom and you're going to catapult up and use that as a jumping block rather than just a like, oh, hey, whoa me, this kind of sucks right now type of thing like that. Cause we've all been there. We've all been in those situations where darn it kind of sucks right now. Like this type of situation like that. But okay. So we have talked so much today about just kind of your journey, growing up through the livestock industry, and then your journey as a photographer. We touched on building your portfolio as a photographer, starting out, things like that. I would love to end this conversation just more on a personal note of where are you going as a business in the next year, and then kind of where are you going personally in the next year?
I think that's a big, loaded question because I'm in a season of I am my business.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm also trying to create some boundaries of, okay, it's like shut the computer off or like put things away. Easier said than done. But personally, one thing that I'm really trying to focus on and probably always will is how do I maintain like a healthy lifestyle while being busy and traveling, because it's not feasible for me to like have this beautiful workout routine and like all these planned meals because I'm not home and I'm eating McDonald's way too much and all this stuff. But like, what can I do to get a little bit more towards the middle? You know, I'm not super healthy and I don't want to be like at the opposite end where I just don't care about my health and wellness. And so what's a sustainable path in that route? That's a big one. Like I said, probably will always be working on that. But in the business, I know we touched a little bit about like, you know, do you niche down? Do you not? And I've kind of started to a little bit like we touched on, but what I really want to do within the next year, especially like I'm on year 2 or I'm starting year 2 of my business, is what can we really get good at and where can we better serve our clients? And so maybe that means saying no to a few more opportunities of things that like, oh, that could be money-making opportunities, but does that really align with my business, where I want to go?
Yeah. That
will be portfolio building, because what I found, and other people say this too, it's just harder said than done. Like saying no might be hard, but afterwards another opportunity comes up and you're like, I'm so glad I like held that weekend off or said no to that. And so just trying to find a better balance of like, how can we do a little bit better job in terms of quality over quantity, and finding that balance of what projects deserve those quality, you know, time and energy and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, exciting things coming. I say all that, but it'll probably be in a much different spot in 1 year, but excited to see what comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your wealth of knowledge with all of us today. I am so grateful that you were able to join us on the podcast and, or on the blog or on the YouTube or however you're listening today. But if you want to keep up with Whitney or follow her a little bit more, I will link all of your handles down below. But if you just want to say them real quick about like how they can get in contact with you or just different things like that.
The best place to find me would probably be Instagram. I think it's Whitney Whitaker photo. I'm also on Facebook, but that's like a push through of everything on Instagram. I am on TikTok. I should not even have said that because it is rough. But it's also one of those things that we're putting ourselves out there and we're posting when we have time because it's not a priority. So love to see you there. I also have a website and an email newsletter. So if you're really like wanting to follow along, love to see you there.
Yes, absolutely. I will link all of those below. And thank you again so much, Whitney. And till next time, friends, thanks for tuning in.